Welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a truly fascinating, data-driven journey ahead of us today. We're going to explore the economic profile of a nation that has completely, and I mean completely, transformed its destiny over the past few decades. If you're into seeing how structured planning and dynamic markets can totally reshape a country's future, you are definitely in the right place. So, let's jump right in and look at the extraordinary rise of Bangladesh.
To really appreciate where a country is today, we have to understand where it started. And for Bangladesh, the initial outlook was, well, incredibly bleak. Right after its independence in the early 1970s, former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger famously labeled the country a bottomless basket. It was largely viewed by the global community as a hopeless case, basically an endless pit for international charity, designated as just a test case for development.
But man, does the data tell a vastly different story today. Modern global monitors now recognize Bangladesh as one of the most promising economies in the entire world. From being brushed off as a bottomless basket, institutions like Goldman Sachs have actually included Bangladesh in their next 11 emerging countries. It has completely flipped the script to earn the title of the emerging tiger of Asia.
Here is exactly how we're going to unpack this transformation in today's Explainer. We'll start with the nature of the economy, then break down the sectoral contributions, look at the history and development planning, explore some emerging economic frontiers, and finally, discuss the reality of the emerging Asian tiger.
All right, Section 1, the nature of Bangladesh's economy. Let's look at the actual mechanics of how this machine runs today.
At its core, Bangladesh operates as a highly dynamic mixed economy. Its main economic engine, that would be the RMG sector, ready-made garments, which drives the lion's share of their export income. But it definitely doesn't stop there. The economy is also heavily sustained by foreign remittances sent back by a massive international labor force. And recently, there's been this really effective push toward developing the private sector and emphasizing foreign direct investment, or FDI, effectively opening its doors to global business.
As you can see, all these different pieces connect in a really complex web. It's like a giant puzzle where public-private partnerships intertwine with international loans for massive mega projects. It's not just one single industry carrying the whole weight. It's a vibrant, mixed economic environment balancing domestic manufacturing right alongside international integration.
So, where is the actual GDP coming from? That brings us to Section 2, sectoral economic contributions.
Now, you might assume a developing nation relies almost entirely on agriculture, right? Well, actually, the data challenges that completely. Services absolutely dominate the economy, accounting for 53% of the total contribution. Industry, which is heavily fueled by that garment manufacturing we just talked about, sits at 29%. Agriculture, meanwhile, makes up 18%.
But listen, do not underestimate that 18%. As Dr. Kondagar Ghulam Mazum notes, resilient agriculture is what cushioned economic shocks and absorbed the unemployed over recent fiscal years. During times of economic turbulence or global slowdowns, the agricultural sector acts as the nation's ultimate safety net, providing stability when the services or industrial sectors face pressure. It's truly the resilient backbone of the country.
So, how did the economy organize itself to achieve this kind of balance? Let's dive into Section 3, History and Development Planning.
The economic history here is a fascinating evolution of policy. Back between 1972 and 1975, the Mujibur Rahman era focused heavily on nationalization, basically a state-owned economy. Then, from 1976 to 1981, the Ziaur Rahman era introduced denationalization. That pivot was accelerated during the Ershad era in the 80s, with a huge focus on private sector growth. Moving into the 90s and early 2000s, the Khaleda Zia era emphasized trade and bilateral economic cooperation. And finally, from 2008 to the present, the Sheikh Hasina era has been totally defined by massive infrastructure megaprojects and aggressively attracting that foreign direct investment we mentioned earlier.
And guiding all of this growth is an incredibly rigorous structure of planning. Did you know Article 15 of the Bangladesh Constitution actually mandates a planned economy to eradicate poverty? It starts at the micro level with the Annual Development Plan, which then feeds into the 5-year plans. For instance, the 8th 5-year plan targets a really ambitious 8.51% GDP growth. This then scales up to Vision 2041, Vision 2071, all the way to the century-spanning Delta Plan 2100. They are literally planning 100 years into the future.
And these aren't just isolated documents sitting on a desk somewhere. The Annual Development Plan is just the tip of the spear that ultimately aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals. Over the past 50 years, this exact, highly structured approach has allowed Bangladesh to cut poverty by more than a third, while significantly increasing its real per capita income.
With such a rock-solid foundation, where is the country looking next? Section 4. Emerging Economic Frontiers.
First up is a massive geographical asset, the blue economy. Following international court verdicts, Bangladesh secured sovereign rights over a staggering 118,813 square kilometers of maritime territory in the Bay of Bengal. That includes 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone. The potential here is just immense, raising really high hopes for extracting vast marine and energy resources to fuel their next generation of industrial growth.
Meanwhile, back on land, the domestic workforce is rapidly modernizing through the gig economy. For a nation with a huge demographic dividend of young, tech-savvy workers, freelancing offers massive benefits. We're talking flexibility, ease of entry, and a taste of entrepreneurship. But of course, the drawbacks are very real. There is often a lack of labor protection, issues with unfair pay, and a fundamental erosion of traditional, stable economic relationships between workers and businesses.
When you think about platforms like Uber or the local ride-sharing giant Pathal, they've absolutely created cheaper, more efficient services for consumers. But they also fundamentally shift the burden of risk directly onto the individual worker. It's a critical transition area to watch as Bangladesh continues to integrate into the global digital marketplace.
To wrap up our explainer today, we need a grounded look at the current macroeconomic reality. Section 5. The Emerging Asian Tiger.
Right now, it's a delicate balancing act. On one hand, you have a massive demographic dividend and a rising middle class that is expected to hit 25% by 2025. That provides incredible momentum. But on the other hand, these are weighed down by some serious macro risks: high inflation on fuel and food, vulnerable remittance inflows, and potential delays in actually implementing those massive infrastructure projects.
Maintaining their growth projection requires an absolute expert high-wire act. While the overall GDP size is expanding, the economy simultaneously has to navigate global headwinds like the Russia-Ukraine war and negative net foreign asset growth. It's a true, ongoing test of their macroeconomic management.
Which brings us to our final thought. We started this explainer with a quote totally dismissing the country as a bottomless basket. Today, through its strategic location, a deeply resilient agricultural sector, booming RMG exports, and century-spanning development plans, it firmly stands as an emerging tiger. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Looking at the hard data, the rapid rise of its middle class, and the vast untapped potential of its blue economy, is Bangladesh the most promising economy of tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this gave you a clear, structured view of a truly incredible economic transformation.